questions about?
Okay, on this first one, we'll go back to page 253. If we have issued the closing disclosure and subsequently find out we need to extend a rate lock for whatever reason, are we required to reissue the closing disclosure each time we extend a rate lock?
So if the rate lock is being extended, just trying to think this through, what's all affected by that? If there's no fee for extending the rate lock and the closing date, see, this is where, if you're extending the rate lock, I'm going to assume that you're not closing on the same date, which means the closing date, the disbursement date, the issue, all that stuff's going to have to be updated. So if you're extending the rate lock, I'm assuming the closing date's changing, which means, yes, you need to redisclose. If for some reason you issued a closing disclosure and the closing date's going to remain the same, you're just extending the rate lock for some reason and it doesn't affect anything else, then I suppose there's a way you wouldn't have to. But traditionally we would see it affecting other things like the closing date and require a revised version.
Okay, this next one is the one we also addressed last week and decided to come back to it with the closing disclosure again this week.
Yep.
We have a situation where the loan amount was increased on a closing disclosure after the appraisal came in higher than expected. The upfront mortgage fee increased slightly and was cured to the customer on the closing disclosure. Should the loan amount have been increased on a loan estimate instead of a closing disclosure, or did we handle this okay?
Well, there's a couple different things I want to address in this. So let's first address if we have a changed circumstance before the closing disclosure is set to go out, but we're ready to issue the closing disclosure, do we have to issue a loan estimate first? And the answer, we believe, is no. There's some bit of misdirection in the rule because it says one thing here and another thing there relative to the loan estimate, but we believe that when they updated TRID 2.0, they meant to indicate that changed circumstances could be identified and taken care of with a closing disclosure without having to go back and reissue a loan estimate and then a closing disclosure tomorrow. So I don't think you have to go back and reissue a loan estimate. It can be just done straight with a closing disclosure. Now, they mentioned doing a tolerance cure because of the increase in the loan amount and the appraisal and what it came in at. And long story short, as long as you issued a closing disclosure within 3 days of learning of the changed circumstance, which is the loan amount increasing, right? It was the appraisal coming in, right?
Yeah, the appraisal came in, which resulted in the loan amount increasing.
Okay, so the appraisal came in, there's your new information. So something happened with the loan amount. That's a result of the changed circumstance, and mortgage insurance changed because of that. Since mortgage insurance is directly related to the changed circumstance, as long as you get a new disclosure out, either a revised loan estimate or a new closing disclosure within 3 days, and you put this new updated mortgage insurance number on there, you wouldn't have a tolerance cure to do. So if anything, it sounds to me like you may not have had to do a tolerance cure, but maybe you didn't get it done within 3 days, and then there would be a tolerance cure. So did I answer all the question?
I believe so.
Yeah, I
Yes.
took us in a lot of different directions there. I just want to make sure I got back to the core question.
Okay, this next one takes us back to the end of last week and the beginning of this week's. Do we need to document how a closing disclosure is provided, or can it be assumed to be delivered by mail?
That's the way our team rolls, is that unless the loan file documentation says something different, okay, the loan closing disclosure is set up such that there's an issue date. And unless the loan file says it's anything else, we're going to assume that it was issued by mail. Okay, so day 1, day 2, day 3, now it's in their hand, and 3 days after that is the soonest we can close. We would only ever question things if the time frame between the issue date and the closing date was less than a week. Then what we would do is, okay, where's the information in the loan file that says it was received earlier than that? As long as that time frame is a week, not counting holidays, there's no reason for us to question or even concern ourselves with how it was issued, when it was issued, things like that, because there's the date issued, and if it's 7 days later, assuming there's no holidays, we're good to go.
And that is all I have at this time.
All right. Well, let's do